So the last year of the season, last year of the year. This is Parshas Nitzavim, but we are going to be talking about Rosh Hashana. In fact, 3 things that can change your Rosh Hashana. The shiur has been kindly sponsored. L'zchus David ben Hadassah. You should have a refuah shlema from his skin irritations. V'yishmalei Hashem kol mish'alosav l'tova. As Rosh Hashana is around the corner, I want to focus on some practical insights into Rosh Hashana. There are absolutely shed loads of themes, ideas, yesodos, and aspects to the Rosh Hashana, as you have probably heard already and have gathered over the years. Rosh Hashana, Aseret Tshuva, Yom Kippur, there's so much out there already, and obviously we're not going to cover most of them. I just want to focus on a few ideas which I think are practical, and if you can get your head around them, and if you can get clarity, any level of clarity in them, I believe then these 3 points can really enhance the entire experience of Rosh Hashana. So in short, I'm going to focus on 3 things: gratitude, dreaming, and tefillah. Okay?
Gratitude is tefillah.
Well, let's see where we go. So before we get into the 3, I just want to give a very short introduction. And I want to explain like this. There are, when somebody or when you discover something is incredible, is awesome, okay? So generally speaking, there's 2 different reactions that a person can have when they observe, when they sense something is incredible. The first reaction, or one of the reactions, is an uptight reaction, and the other reaction I would describe as a relaxed reaction. Okay, let me explain what I mean. So an uptight reaction is that because you know this, whatever it is absolutely awesome, your whole body tenses up and you feel all intense about it, and you feel a pressure or a stress to make the most of it. You know these people who go on when you're, I don't know, on any occasion, and they're like, oh, make the most of it, it's like almost like you're not going to naturally make the most of it. They have to really dial it up, you know?
Right.
But that's what I would describe as more the uptight reaction. The more relaxed reaction is, in my opinion, a bit more sensible and helpful, which is you notice, you take note of the fact that this is something incredible, this is something awesome, but you still retain your feeling of normalcy. You're still balanced. You're still calm. You're still feeling good-natured. And if you retain that, then when you experience what you're about to experience, it comes across much more helpful, much easier. Rav Chatzkel builds on this. I'm going to get to in a second. Rosh Hashana. Just because Rosh Hashana is an awesome day doesn't mean you have to turn into a stress ball about it. That's my point. Even if you're well-intentioned, sometimes taking too seriously a good thing is not a good thing. So it's important that, yes, Rosh Hashana is an awesome day, and we're going to talk about different aspects of it, but it's important that in the general approach to it, one really tries not to get too uptight about it, but rather tries to retain their sense of normalcy about it. Rav Chatzkel builds on the Mesilas Yesharim and Perik Beis, where the Mesilas Yesharim is talking about Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Hara's tricks with us. The title of his piece is Habilbul v'hatirda moinim hatshuva. That confusion, and when a person's taken up in the head, that prevents a person from doing a proper tshuva. Now, Chatzkel writes the following words: Shayetzer hara mevalbel es ha'adam, u'meinea oisoi milehizboinen v'lachshov oidos asidim atzovei. Part of the work of the Yetzer Hara is to confuse the person, but almost in a positive sense. He tries to make a person so busy in his head that he can't think. And we're talking not busy necessarily with nonsense, although that as well, but busy with good things. As I said in the first words, in the opening words, Rosh Hashanah is full of stuff, and there's so much you can hear and listen and watch and learn and take note of, that you can really, Yetzer Hara can get yourself all into it, but it removes from you the possibility of just being able to just be misboinen, just take it in reflectively. Or be'esa bilbul v'haltirda, says of Chatzkel, yitochin she'adam rotz v'isa pu'las shoynos v'en yodea le'on rotz or ma matridai. It's possible that as a result of all this busyness in a person's head, the guy is running. He's running like a headless chicken. He's running all directions. He's running around. His frame of mind is not settled. He's so sped up. He's got no idea what he's doing and why he's doing it. So he might be feeling busy, but he's not focused on the essence. So if you want the signal as to where you're holding on this spectrum, in my opinion, you want to look at 2 things. At any given point, and this is before, this is during Rosh Hashana, at any given point, you want to look at 2 things. First of all, how are you feeling? Are you feeling stressed? Or are you feeling calm? Or on the spectrum of the two ends, which end are you closer to? And the second thing, and I've mentioned this before in other times, but I really think for me it really works, is how are you interacting with your family and your loved ones? Are you getting more worked up because of your concentration and your energy and you're going to get busy with whatever it is, the importance of a day? Or are you able to interact with ease, with calmness, and with good spirit? And to me, that is the biggest signal of, you want to check in with yourself, where am I? Where am I with my experience of a day? Yes, you're well-intentioned. Yes, you want to take things seriously. Yes, the Rosh Hashana is awesome. You want to make the most of it. But that shouldn't translate into you becoming a stress ball. Don't let the Yetzer Hara wind you up with the notion that the importance of the day is going to get you into a space which actually clouds everything else that's important. Not least the idea of a fully functioning human being in a calm and Balmidas way of living. Okay? That's just a few words of introduction. I just thought, came to me with clarity. I feel I wanted to share that. But as I said, we'll talk about 3 points, and the first point is gratitude. Rav Eli Lopian writes in Mareches HaTshuva about the fundamental importance of being a makir toiv, someone who is grateful. And he he says this is true, obviously, when it comes to other human beings, not least one's spouse, one's parents, etc., and people, family, friends, whoever it is that a person gains from. But by extension, that would lead a person also to be of a certain type that is grateful to the Ribbono Shel Olam as well. We, when we daven often, or we're drawn towards special times of davening, we're often focused on all of that which we lack. What Rav Eli Lopian is advising that we do is that we actually should turn and notice those things that we do have from the Ribbono Shel Olam and be grateful to him for that. He quotes Rosh Hashana, who commented on the famous Gemara, the Gemara in Rosh Hashana, and tells us on Rosh Hashana, Ribbono Shel Olam said, Imru lefanai malchis kadesh tamlichoni aleichem. You should say to me, Pesukim of malchis, of kingship, of accepting Hashem's kingship upon us, Kedei, in order that I'm going to rule over you, I'm going to be king over you. Now, this is not just an exercise in saying some psukim. This is something we're supposed to say, but supposed to feel, and supposed to recognize, and supposed to come away with a greater acceptance of Hashem's power over us and Hashem's control of the world. And Rosh Hashana says, people will be absolutely fine proclaiming Hashem, the God of the entire world. The Hashem is in charge of the whole universe, not just this universe, but all the universes and all the stars and all the planets. But when it comes to the individual themselves, recognizing with a real and genuine hakara that the Ribbono Shel Olam is in charge of their life, of each and every one of us, Hashem is guiding us, Hashem is in charge, Hashem is showing us the way, and what Ribbono Shel Olam wants happens, and what He doesn't want to happen doesn't happen. For a person to get to that level hakara, that's already a bit more difficult, says Rosh Hashana. But when the Gemara says Kadesh Tamlichuni Aleichem, the Gemara doesn't mean that the Ribbono Shel Olam is saying just recognize Hashem as Melech HaOlam, as King of the world. Recognize Hashem is Tamlichuni Aleichem, on you. Each and every individual should see HaKadosh Baruch Hu in their life and recognize Hashem is in charge. Says Rav Eli Lopian, gratitude is the other side of the same coin as Malchus. If you reach a point of clarity where you're able to see that the Ribbono Shel Olam is in charge and runs every detail of our life, then the feeling with which you would be living will be a feeling of gratitude, because you will come to recognize and to realize and appreciate how much the Ribbono Shel Olam actually gives us in our life, because you'll recognize the fact that He is in total control of our life. So as the current year, Tov Shin Pei Hei, winds down, I would say it's a wise thing for a person perhaps to spend a bit of time before the advance of the new year, just simply an exercise of noting and then verbalizing the good that the Ribbono Shel Olam has given you as an individual the past year, not just you, your family, and yes, Klal Yisrael as well. And everyone will have a different take and everyone will have a different experience, but there's definitely things, the fact that you're alive is a good start, but there's definitely things that a person can point to and look towards and take note of when they're thinking about and reflecting on the past year. And it is definitely a good preparation to come armed with that gratitude to the Rebbeinu Shalom as we enter into Rosh Hashana. Because as we go into Rosh Hashana, we want to get into the spirit of recognizing more and more of Hashem. Well, if you start with gratitude, you're in a good place. That's the great preparation, in my view, of the Malchus of Rosh Hashana. That is point number one. The second thing I want to talk about is what I call dreaming. Now, I don't mean dreaming during davening, falling asleep because the rabbi's Rosh is going on too long. Make a broader point about Rosh Hashana, which I first heard from Rabbi Shaul Rosenblatt, my Rav in London. But if you look around, you'll see it's a Dover Pasha Ad Moed. Imagine an architect is called into a meeting with a very wealthy client. And the wealthy client says, listen here, I want you to design me a house. Whatever you can dream of, that's what I'm going to get built. Now, if that architect goes ahead, puts some work in, and builds an amazing garden shed, he's missed the boat, clearly. He's really, really limited himself by thinking in terms of a garden shed, right? Rosh Hashana is not just a day when the Rebbeinu Shalom judges and decides for the next year for every individual. Rosh Hashana is a day when we get to dream the impossible. Rosh Hashana is a day when there's a blank canvas, you've been given the brush, and you can ask the Rebbeinu Shalom, you can envision a year of things that currently look beyond your possibility. The Anshe Knesset HaGedolah themselves point us in this direction. If you just think about the tefillas that we're going to repeat again and again throughout Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, tefillas that to that level and to that extent we don't say any other time of the year, although we make reference to it, but not in the same way. The v'chein tein pachtecha Hashem Elokeinu al kol maasecha. What are we asking from the Rebbeinu Shalom? We're asking for the entire world to recognize Hashem, and we don't just ask it for once, we ask it again and again in different ways. Have you seen a direction of travel of where this world is going? Into progressive leftism, far away from religion? And yet we stand up in the Rebbeinu Shalom, we say, Hashem, please may it be your will that the whole world will recognize the Rebbeinu Shalom. Rosh Hashanah, we stand and we ask for days of Mashiach, we ask for days of glory, days where the whole world will recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu. These aren't small requests. This isn't us building a garden shed. This is us attacking a blank canvas with the ability to dream beyond boundaries, beyond limitations, asking for the fullest, most incredible, long-lived hope and dream of every Jew. Rebbeinu Shalom, come back to the world in glory. Let everybody recognize you as Mashiach. These are huge dreams of a Yid. And this is the text that the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah chose for us to say on Rosh Hashanah. Isn't there a huge message there? That Rosh Hashanah is a day to dream beyond your limitations. It's a blank canvas. Come at it with your dreams and nothing is beyond you. Nosson Wachtfogel is quoted in Leket Rishimus. How important it is, he says, on Rosh Hashanah, forget the past. This isn't a day of tshuva. You need to believe that everything and every part of your life, and your life I don't mean individually only, I mean collectively, in Klal Yisrael, but in broad terms, your life can be different. Just forget it, forget the year that was. Forget what happened before. Forget your limitations of the past. Focus on where you desire to go. Focus on where you want to go, your dream to go. Don't be afraid to think big. And don't just think big for yourself, think big for others, and think big for Klal Yisrael. Rosh Hashanah is a time to use the day, and I suggest beforehand, but to ask yourself, what do I want to achieve this year? What do I wish for? If, age-old classic of wishing well. Imagine you're in a scenario. You could wish for anything. What would you wish for? It's a worthwhile question to ponder over, because when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, that's the day to wish for it. And that's the day when Hashem could decide it to happen. So whether it is spiritual, whether it's emotional, whether it's personal, Rosh Hashanah is a day to dare to dream. And that's why it's worthwhile before Rosh Hashana, take a bit of time and ponder over this fundamental question: what do I want? Who do I want to become? Why? Why is it important to me? And then come armed with that ambition and that dream and that wish for Rosh Hashana, where you can just turn to Rebbeinu Shalom and you can ask him for it. So what we've said so far is we've spoken about the need for gratitude to Hashem. We've said how gratitude is the other side of the coin of Malchus. The second thing we've said so far is the day of Rosh Hashanah is a day for dreaming. It's a day for imagining the impossible and looking towards new realities that can come to your life. The last part, the third point, I want to focus on Koach HaTfilah, which is something we spend most of our days of most of the time in Rosh Hashanah doing, davening, and it stretches out into Aseret Tshuva, as is well known. Hashem is very close. Yom Kippur, no day like it. We're davening and davening and davening. So I want to mention an important point about Tfilah, how to approach davening. And obviously davening also is the way we're going to articulate that which we just said in terms of gratitude to Hashem and in terms of our dream. You want to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom, okay, how do we ask? Now, when I've spoken about Tfilah in earlier shiurim, and I've made a point, I have received feedback which has been clear to me that people have kind of misunderstood my point. So I want to try and deliver it again, but I'm going to build it carefully because I think it's really fundamental and it really makes a difference. But the thing is, it's a subtle point, okay? So when you hear it, just consider it. I'm going to try and make it as clear as I can. So let's begin this point as follows. We say Mishnah of Peah every day. And we quote in the Mishnah of Peah a list. The list of those things they are a list of things which we gain from the fruits of in this world, but the main bulk of schar is in Olam Haba. And one of those things, towards the end of the list, is Iyun Tefillah. Now, Iyun Tefillah really means taking Tefillah seriously, okay? Taking davening seriously. So what does it sound like from the Mishnah? It's a great thing to do, and surely we would agree. It's a great thing to do to take your davening seriously. The problem is, the Gemara in Rosh Hashana, Tezvav, Omar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says three things. Shloisha dvarim mazkirin avonos shel adam. They remind Hashem of our averos, which is another way of saying they're not great things that are to be avoided. Okay? Three things. Kirin otui, when a person goes past a wall that's bent, because it sort of reminds Hashem saying, oh, should we bother letting this guy survive this or not? The second thing on his list is Iyun Tefillah. And Rashi explains, what does it mean, Iyun Tefillah, in this context, in this negative context? Soimech al tefilosoi shetehei nishmas. He relies on his tefillah that will be heard. And he tries to have kavanah. Now, this is an absolutely astonishing Rashi and Gemara. You're telling me when a person puts effort into davening, wanting his tefillahs to be answered, it's a negative? And again in Brachos, the Gemara makes a similar point. The Gemara says, anyone who extends his tefillah, or ma'ayin ba, the same lashon iyun, it's not a good thing. Rashi says, what does it mean? He's saying to his heart that the Rebbeinu Shalom should do as he asks for because he's davening with kavanah. So first of all, what does this mean? Why is it a negative? And second of all, how do we square this with the first Mishnah we mentioned, where Iyun Tefillah was to be praised? It's a great thing for a person to put effort into Tefillah. Why is these Gemaras and Rashis, why are we putting a negative light on it? So Ritva explains the difference. And he says, of course, for a person to daven in a way that he wants his tefillah to be answered, and I'll clarify what this means in a minute, is a negative. You know the type of iyun tefillah that's a positive, that the Mishnah in Peah is talking about, says the Ritva? Yes, iyun tefillah toiv ma'oid, there's a very good iyun, v'hu ha'ma'ayin, o mechavim b'tefillah, le'oimra b'kavonas halev, aval einoi mitzapeh shetiskayim. A person who says the words, who concentrates on tefillah, in a meaningful way, in a way of connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's a valuable thing. But not that he is waiting or expecting his tefillah to be accepted. There is a subtle difference in the feeling, in the experience of tefillah, between someone who is trying through the sheer force of his concentration to almost force HaKadosh Baruch Hu round his view. It's like, you'll know what I mean when you get it. It's the guy who's davening, because it could look similar, but it doesn't feel the same. The guy who's davening with such intensity for what he wants, and he's so blinkered and single-minded and focused on that particular bakasha which I want, and he's making it almost all about himself. But it's missing the main point of tefillah, which is the connection to the Almighty, the connection to the power that actually is in charge, which is the Ribono Shel Olam. It's as if his only value in davening in the way he's davening is if the Ribono Shel Olam does what he wants him to do. That's the type of Ian tefillah that's frowned upon. But you have a guy who comes to the Ribono Shel Olam and he davens from the heart. Of course he means what he says. Of course he would like it, Hashem, if you fulfill his bakasha. Of course, that's the point of davening. We want Hashem to listen to us. But he doesn't come with a personal agenda. It's not like everything is riding on it. Don't make demands. Don't come with kindness to Ribono Shel Olam, as if Hashem owes you one. Listen, if I daven hard enough, Hashem's definitely going to answer me. That's not the right feeling. One has to daven with humility. Accept the fact that Ribono Shel Olam wants to hear from me, and I want to talk to Ribono Shel Olam. I want to tell Ribono Shel Olam how I feel. I want to tell Ribono Shel Olam my bakasha. But the background, I know jolly well that Hashem has every best interest in mind, and Hashem will only do what's right, what's good for me, and that's okay too. There's another way that I want to bring to the table here, which might help to think about this from a slightly different angle. Okay, the Medrash in Tehillim, Mizmach of Hey Beis. On the pasuk Elekai b'cha b'tachti, David HaMelech says, Ribono Shel Olam, I had b'tachin in you. Ale Vosha, he wants to be protected and not to be embarrassed by his enemies. So the Medrash Tehillim brings the following story. There was a guy who was caught engaged in suspicious activities during the night time. And the night watchmen, whoever nabbed him, they wanted to give him a good old beating. We're talking in pagan times, you know, how else do you punish, right? They're going to give him a good old beating. And the guy, the person who was caught says, no, don't hit me. I'm a grandson of the king. So when the watchmen heard, this guy's a grandson of the king, they're like, oh, well, hang on a second. We don't want to mess with the grandson of the king just like that. But we're not actually sure he's the grandson of the king. He's just saying he is, right? So we're not sure. We'll put him in the prison overnight. So they locked him up overnight. And in the morning, the first thing they did was bring him straight to the king. And they come to the king and say, hey, we found your grandson last night. So the king turns to the chap and he says, my child, do you recognize me? Do you know me? And he says, no, I don't actually know you. He said, what do you mean? You're my grandson. What are you on about? My grandson? The guy says, my master, in truth, I am no relation. But I put my trust in you because these guys were going to beat me. So the only way I could get out of it was by saying, I am a grandson of you. The king says, because he relied on me, leave him alone. Says the Medrash, David HaMelech comes to the Ribono Shel Olam, he says, Elekai, b'cha b'tachti. I was beteach in you, Hashem. Please, don't let me down and protect me from my enemies. So, when we come to the Ribono Shel Olam, we ask for things. The right way to do it is to come by way of bitachon. It's a way of dependency on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's from that recognition, it's from that space and recognition that the Ribono Shel Olam is in charge and what the Ribono Shel Olam wants will happen and Hashem only has our best in mind, etc. Of course we get to ask. Of course we want to ask the Ribono Shel Olam to do it differently, to do it as we want him to do it. We want certain good things for us that we think are good in our world. Of course we should ask, and I've said this before. But don't come with that baggage, with that expectation of Hashem has to answer. And if he doesn't answer as you want it, then the whole thing's pointless. Because that takes away from the tefillah. That's the Iyun tefillah. That's to be. And I think the best format for this is to have a conversation with Hashem. And I've written down how I would have it. Genuinely, this is what I try and do. Not word by word, but you get the concept, right? It might sound something like this. You've got a specific bakasha, a specific request. You want to make it to the Ribono Shel Olam. As I say to you, you want to make it in the right way. You want to come at it from the right perspective. It's something like this. Listen, Hashem, I have nothing to offer here. I'm completely in your hands. I'm completely reliant on you, Hashem. I want to share with you my dream for the next year. I want to express how much I want from the year in order to serve you. And I sometimes make reference to the man cholikim chaim, because we know very well the vort, that the way to ask from Hashem for life is to show how you're going to spiritually gain from that bakasha. Okay, I have no one else, only you, Hashem. In other words, what you're doing is you're talking to Hashem, you're sharing with him, you're explaining your position, you're bringing Hashem into your heart. That's the way to interact with Hashem in Tefillah, and that's what the Gemara says in Tezayin about Kol Shana, Kol Shana Sherosha B'Tchilosa Misasheres B'Sefer. Any year that literally means that is poor in the beginning will become rich in the end. Says Rashi, what does it mean? Poor, She Yisrael Oisin Atzmon Roshin Rosh Hashana L'Daber Tachnunim, where the Klal Yisrael make themselves poor to speak supplications and heartfelt requests to the Rebbeinu Shloim. Such a type of tefillah is what's expected and what's required on Rosh Hashanah. It's coming with humility, it's coming with bitochen, it's coming with dependency on the Rebbeinu Shloim. And if you crack this, you've got the best davening that you need for Rosh Hashanah. I think there's another deal. Everybody talks about Rosh Hashanah being the day of judgment, but Asher Hu Sham, where the person is at. And what I noticed this year, and I think it's a true idea, that where we learned it from is from Yishmael. The pasuk we learned it from is Kishoma Elokim El Koil Hanar B'Asher Hu Sham, that the Rebbeinu Shalom listened to the voice of the child. And I think what the Gemara is doing with this statement and with Limud is it's telling us it's tefillah related. Which other time in Rosh Hashanah is there where the Rebbeinu Shalom can look and judge us Ba'asher Hu Sham, where we are at our best? During davening. You're having a conversation with the Rebbeinu Shalom. When you have a conversation with the Almighty, with the Rebbeinu Shalom, what is that conversation like? Like I just explained. It's a conversation of humility. It's a conversation of bitochen. It's a conversation of sharing dreams. It's a conversation of an exalted nature. It's when you're bearing your soul, you're telling the Rebbeinu Shalom where you really want to be. If that's the type of conversation you're having with the Rebbeinu Shalom, that's a beautiful moment of Ba'asher Hu Sham, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu can look down and say, ooh, this guy, he means business. This guy, I can see he wants to be somewhere good. Forget the past, forget what was, it makes no difference. I'm going to try and give this guy a good din. As I say, this type of tefillah, which we're elaborating on, is called sicha. There are many other types. There's another type which is relevant perhaps to Rosh Hashana, which is called tza'aka. Rosh Hashana, Tezayin, also from Rabbi Yitzchak, says, Yofet tza'aka la'adam ben kodem gezadin la'ach gezadin. Of course, there are moments and there are types of situations where a person wants to cry out to Hashem. This isn't a conversation. This is much more a cry for help. And that's also totally fine. And if a person is genuine, obviously it has to be genuine, but if there's a deep, heartfelt desire for a particular outcome because of something, chas v'shalom, someone's ill, someone needs a shiur of some nature, then of course tza'aka is appropriate. But it's still with humility. It's still without that baggage of expectation of, you better do like I say. We're not in the position to demand that at all. As we say in Slichas, we knock on Hashem's door. Hashem opens the door. He wants to hear us. But we come supplication. We come with, like poor people, not with great big expectations. So just to bring it all together, this last point, ultimately tefillah is all about connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is what it's about. The form that it takes is one of question and answer. The form that it takes is one of asking Hashem for things. But essentially what we're doing and what we're operating from is a place of humility. So just to summarize what we've said today, it's in preparation for Rosh Hashana, it's important, first of all, that the way we approach the awesomeness and importance of the day, we don't get uptight about it. We notice the importance, we take note of it, but we try and stay relaxed and not tense. Second thing we said was, it's important to come with gratitude to Rebbeinu Shalom, come with gratitude of what went on in the last year, and the gratitude is the other side of the same coin that is Malchus. If you come with a feeling of gratitude, if you're there recognizing HaKadosh Baruch Hu for his goodness, at the same time you're recognizing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's extent and control of your life and of the world. The next thing we said was, make sure you use Rosh Hashanah as a time to dream big. Don't let the last year dictate to you where you want to be in the future. The canvas is completely blank. You can brush whatever picture you want. Don't be satisfied with building a garden shed. And the last point we said was daven with humility, daven with dependence on Hashem. Have a conversation. Have a conversation and bring the Rebbeinu Shalom into your life by sharing with him your place of desperation that you're at, that you need him, that ultimately your dream, your plan for the future, how you need the Rebbeinu Shalom's help for it, and do it with a feeling of bitochen that whatever happens is good anyway, and Hashem always has our good and best interests in mind. May we be zeicha to ksima v'chasima teva. Thank you for joining me for Tov Shin Pei Hey. I'll see you on the other side.